Paterson has a reputation. You know, kind of growing up, it's this place that, you know, you're not supposed to go, right? It's considered an unsafe place, I guess. But, you know, as we got older and we got old enough to kind of, you know, ride bikes and eventually drive, you know, we would go down to Paterson.
Todd Darling grew up in Wayne, just outside of Paterson, New Jersey.
Like a lot of suburban white kids, he would, you know, buy drugs and go underage drinking and, you know, kind of get into trouble, do all the things that you weren't supposed to do.
Todd moved on. He went into the restaurant world, eventually moving to Hong Kong, where he started his own business. Todd was already taking pictures for himself, but in 2014, when democracy protests broke out in Hong Kong, news organizations, including Time magazine, began to buy his photographs. Todd decided to follow a new calling.
I've had a previous career as a businessman and as a restaurateur. It's something that I still continue to do, but ultimately I was burned out on the business aspect of the restaurant business, which I love the creativity that comes from that. But as the business grew, it became more about office work, which is not me. And so I very much like to be out doing something, making things. And the restaurant business, like photography, is also a craft.
So Todd worked on his new craft. He completed a documentary program at the International Center of Photography in New York. And now, it's his project on Paterson that's keeping him here, commuting for weeks at a time between New Jersey and Hong Kong, where his business and his wife and children remain.
Maybe it was because I had lived out of the States for so long, it really caught my attention that, you know, so much violence was going on so close to the home where I was raised.
At first, Todd was thinking about documenting gun culture in Paterson.
However, as I began to research the city, as I was just getting started in the project, I read a book of poems by William Carlos Williams, who is this very well-known poet who penned this beautiful long-form poem on Paterson. It was broken up into 5 books over a number of years in the mid-20th century. And so with kind of those poems in the back of my head, I began to like pick different parts of the city. For example, one day I would choose the river above the falls. And then the next day I'd go and photograph the river below the falls. And then I'd photograph the falls. And then I'd photograph a mill. And then I'd photograph the downtown and the people in the streets. And I'd spend a week just photographing portraits of people walking down the streets. This is a part of the poem from the first book of poems by William Carlos Williams. Half the river red, half steaming purple, from the factory vents spewed out hot, swirling, bubbling, the dead bank shining mud. What can he think else? Along the gravel of the ravished park, torn by the wild workers' children's tearing up the grass, kicking, screaming? A chemistry corollary to academic misuse, which the theorem with accuracy accurately misses. He thinks their mouths eating and kissing, spitting and sucking, speaking. A partotype of 5. He thinks 2 eyes, nothing escapes them, neither the convolutions of the sexual orchid, hedged by fern and honey smells, to the last hair of the consent of the dying, and silk spins from the hot drums to a music of pathetic souvenirs, a comb and a nail file in an imitation leather case. Paterson, down the hill from where I grew up, is like many cities in America today, facing a severe drug epidemic. But Paterson is unique in that it was founded in 1792 by Alexander Hamilton as America's first planned industrial city.
Todd's making a film about Paterson, working on a book of photographs, and collecting all kinds of historical material.
Paterson faces a lot of significant social challenges. They, struggle with poverty, violence, drug addiction. That being said, it has incredible immigrant communities. It has some of the best food in North Jersey. It's full of its own kind of unique idiosyncrasies, rooted in this kind of really deep American historical past. Living so close to it, I never understood how kind of rich that history was.
An offshoot of his Paterson documentary project is a series Todd calls The Grassroots of Hip Hop.
All right, I think we got it, bro. Thank you, man, I appreciate it.
I really wanted a way to connect with young people. For editing them, I'll send you a few digital ones for you to use for Instagram. And hip hop music was something that I loved growing up. I still love it now. They make these prints, and then they actually write lyrics or significant words that kind of describe themselves or describe an aspect of their life or their neighborhood on the prints themselves.
Photographer Todd Darling is fascinated by the city and people of Paterson, as was William Carlos Williams, his inspiration.
A statement by William Carlos Williams about the poem Paterson, May 31st, 1951. I deliberately selected Paterson as my reality. My own suburb was not distinguished or varied enough for my purpose. There were other possibilities, but Paterson topped them.